Emmy, the crisis, the genocide, the war in Sudan has been described as the greatest humanitarian crisis. And yet I feel very few people know what is going on. What do people need to know about what's happening in Sudan right now?
It's been going on for more than 20 years, and it's something that was entirely preventable. So it's not just the largest humanitarian crisis of our time, but it was something that could have entirely been prevented. 15 million people displaced, 150,000 people killed, women, children, raped, starved, civilians tortured, kidnapped, disappeared. Finding out our family members were killed by watching videos that our murderers, like the RSF who are perpetrating the genocide, finding out our family members were killed this way. That's how I found out one of my cousins was killed. I think what the world needs to know is that not only is this happening right now, but that it was and still is entirely preventable. So that's what I believe is missing from a lot of the conversation.
I mean, it's described as a civil war. You have two armed groups. You have the Sudanese armed forces who are supported by external actors, and you have the RSF rebels who are also supported by external forces. How much of this is about a fight for land, and how much of this is about ethnicity?
The genocide is in Darfur, and the war is in all of the country. And what's so important is that Sudanese people don't call this a civil war. It is a proxy war. What ended up happening was that in 2021, the RSF and the SAF cooperated to create a coup that overthrew the transitional civilian government and our last chance at democracy. And so these two warring parties are now fighting for what they call the sulta, which is the crown or the sultanate of the entire country. I think what's so ironic about all of this is that being someone from Darfur, I can tell you that we're experiencing genocide and living in poverty, and yet we're sitting on like some of the largest gold reserves in the entire world. And that's what the fight is about. It's about access to the rest of Africa, through all of Sudan. And it's about essentially this fight for power and geopolitical control of a very, very key region that sits at the intersection of Africa and the Middle East. Everything that people fight about in politics and war, it's happening in Sudan.
How hard is it to engage your fellow Americans in what is happening? I feel the conflict in Gaza has a high level of public awareness, and as does the war in Ukraine. Yet Darfur, Sudan, doesn't seem to have that.
When the genocide in Darfur first started in the early 2000s, the genocide that has never ended, the first people who supported us were survivors. So it was Holocaust survivors, people from Rwanda, Bosnia, South Sudan, and so many other places who also experienced the same things. And I have to say that this is also true about Gaza, about Palestine in general, about Ukraine, Yemen, the Congo, and so many other places that are suffering. Right now, as survivors, we understand that none of us are free until all of us are free. It's a fight for all of humanity. Because if you're saying that it's okay for children to be killed and tossed into the fire in Darfur, if you're saying it's okay for our families, entire families, to be hung from trees, if you're saying that it's okay for the blood to be seen from space, and these are things that are happening in my hometown. You can see the blood from outer space. If you're saying that it's okay for it to happen in Darfur, if you're saying it's okay for it to happen in Sudan, you're saying it's okay for it to happen anywhere in the world.
You've written some very powerful poetry, in particular Sudan Baladi, about how this affects you as well as many Sudanese expats and people who are still in the country. What does it mean personally?
Sudan Baladi means Sudan is my home. Poetry not only helps me be able to cope with and just deal with all of these things that are happening. How am I able to talk to you like this right now without breaking down? Because I've already broken down every single day of this war. Every single morning, every single day when we're getting the updates, every day I'm just completely broken. But I know that there's still hope, because if people on the ground, if our families on the ground who are surviving are not losing hope, I don't have a right to lose hope. And that's why for me in this moment, it's so important to be sitting here with you and talking about these things. What does the poetry mean to me? What does Sudan Baladi mean to me? It means that my entire country is crying out right now and saying, you know, we've been killed with our families over and over again. And even though it's the largest humanitarian crisis of our time, even though it's entirely preventable, even though it's, you know, all these world powers turning our country into their playground, the world doesn't step in.